So how are you aligning yourself to address these customer needs, or how are you changing your value proposition for this?
We ask our customers. That's usually the best way to do it. Steve Jobs once said, start with the customer and work backwards.
Beyond the developers, I think organizations are looking at giving Mac as a choice. And we are seeing more and more organizations going towards that direction in terms of giving a great experience for their employees, because the experience part, that's a big shift that we have seen.
What's different about Jamf's approach to creating better experience?
What is really going to make them adopt more technology to change and transform their work is really how we think about it.
Endpoint device management and security has been of strategic importance to enterprises globally, right? It's a topic of discussion for years. It's of critical importance. But what's happened over the years is the environment around it is changing, right? Which poses new needs, which poses new gaps, and also what I hear is Jamf is clearly rapidly aligning itself to address these needs. And that's why today we have a great panel to discuss the changes as well as get Jamf's perspective on this. So today we have a great panel. I would like to introduce John Strosahl, the CEO of Jamf, Henry Patel, the Chief Strategy Officer, and Chiranjeev, the country head of India. Okay, great. So I'm looking forward to this discussion, and I think we have a fantastic panel. But John, let me start with you, right? You're interacting with customers globally, and I know that their needs are shifting. So why don't you give us a big picture first of what are the key shifts that you're seeing in customer needs when it comes to mobile device management?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. You know, when I think about, I've actually been at Jamf since 2015, so over 10 years, or just coming up on 10 years, and I've really seen that shift over the past 10 years. And one of the things, you know, that customers and analysts sometimes will ask me is, what gets you most excited, or what keeps you up at night? And really, it's the same answer. It's opportunity. And when I think about the transformation of the industry over the last, just even the last couple of years, really what we've seen is a proliferation of the mobile device. And if you think about just a couple of industries or a couple of examples, transportation, airline industries, for example, the pilots, they don't carry the flight bags anymore into the cockpit. They have an iPad. The flight attendants walking up and down the aisle, they're carrying iPhones to help you and to help serve you. Underneath the wing, the maintenance people don't have the big user manuals for the maintenance logs. They actually carry iPads as well. And we've even been asked recently by airlines to get the watch under management so that they could use the baggage handlers. They can track all of those bags using the watch. And every time a baggage handler touches a bag, they know exactly where that bag is. That's just one example. And then if I think about retail, another example, there's no such thing as an old school cash register where you go and you pay for whatever merchandise. The employees are walking around the stores and they all have mobile devices. And each one of these devices, they can scan the merchandise. The customer can pay right directly with the employee and walk out the door. So we're really seeing a transformation of how companies are finding new and innovative ways to use these mobile devices. And the thing is, for us with mobile device management, every one of those devices needs to be both managed and secured. And so we're seeing a great opportunity there. And we're seeing that across all markets and certainly across all of our customer base.
So I like the point you said new and innovative ways of using mobile devices.
Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic point, right? Because that also creates a new set of expectations, right, from Jamf. So how are you aligning yourself to address these customer needs, or how are you changing your value proposition for this?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, when we think about our value proposition, we ask our customers. That's usually the best way to do it. Steve Jobs once said, start with the customer and work backwards. And we certainly have. We talk to our customers all the time. And one of the things that our customers have said to us is, we really love the Apple ecosystem, the interoperability of it. We would have more Apple devices within our ecosystem if we felt better about those devices accessing our corporate resources. Now, Apple makes the most secure operating system available, bar none. However, with more and more corporations using the Apple ecosystem and the Apple devices, it just presents a bigger larger and a more valuable target for bad actors to really target those devices. And so the CISO organizations and the InfoSec teams have all said, if we can work on having these devices access our corporate resources and we feel better about that, we'll have more Apple devices. And so that's certainly something that we have leaned into in conjunction with Apple as well, of course. But just to think about endpoint, not only management, but endpoint security, mobile threat defense, network security, and most recently, dynamic identity. And those are all the things that we're doing to help both manage and secure those devices so that companies can succeed with Apple.
You've actually said my next question, right? That's a perfect segue. And Henry, probably I'll want you to step in here. John spoke about increasing devices, more endpoint management, right? And a survey by Frost Sullivan showed us that about 25% companies globally are spending on UEM. And that's expected to increase to about 40% of enterprises spending on UEM in the next 2 to 3 years, right? So clearly there are more devices, there's more need for endpoint management. How do you see Jamf being ready for this, right? Addressing this growth, right? What's a strategy behind it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, and every few years, we actually look at that problem and say, okay, how are we readying ourselves for the next wave of growth here? And I think there are a couple of different points. Obviously, the trends we see, even based on the market research we do on our own, is that there are areas of augmentation. Even when you look at a UEM solution, there are specific platform-specific needs that customers have. And so Apple's no different, right? Apple is a great user experience. People know them as a consumer device, but over the last decade and a half, they've dedicated to bringing Apple into the enterprise. And what's different about that is how do we actually enhance what Apple is building in the operating system and make it more enterprise level for the customer? So when we think about how are we readying ourselves, it's really about making sure that we understand, to John's point, what are the customer pain points, what are their challenges, and how do we meet the customer in the middle to say, we bridge the gap from what Apple provides and what the enterprise needs. The second thing is that, management security, we talk about management, but security, as we know over the last several years, has become a critical need. Doesn't matter the size of organization or type of organization. So making sure that we blend the two, that management and security are one, is another area where you can actually have management without security, but you can have security without management, right? And
Fantastic quote.
And so we need to. John says it a lot, so I copied it from him. So it is a sign of that there's no two distinct areas that we need to focus on in the future. It is how do you actually build the bridge to have both at the same time. And third is the magic word of the last 2 years is AI. Simplifying, the experience for the end user, simplifying the experience for the IT and the InfoSec teams, and then taking a lot of the information that we have that is customer centric for that customer and leveraging AI to make sure that we're not only simplifying the experience, but helping them understand what's going on in the devices so they can make good business decisions about, the configuration and management and security. So it's really about how do you harness all that telemetry that we provide that, we have a lot of data around Apple devices and the telemetry, but how does a customer actually take advantage of it? That's the next wave. It's not only providing that data, it's how do we give the customers the right tools with AI to be able to harness that?
And some of the things that you talked about, I think we'll go deeper into many of these aspects, but you mentioned Apple devices, right? And clearly Apple devices has a significant share. It's not only about Apple mobile devices, but also tablets, right? So we're seeing that ecosystem play there. And Jamf is strong there, right? So how are you continuing to deliver greater value to customers from that angle?
Yeah, it's, John used a couple of different examples at the beginning, and those are transformational, right? How do we transform the way a user is able to leverage the Apple device, use it for their daily work, but also enjoy the experience of using it? One of the things that every company looks for is how do you create loyalty with your employee base? How do you retain talent? How do you make them more productive? Mm-hmm. And ensuring that the tooling that we provide our customers enhances all that is really where I think people can shine and really deliver that. Second thing is, we have a sort of a Jamf and approach, which is, for us, it's important that we fit into existing infrastructure because we know it's a Microsoft world. So we need to make sure that we fit into the Microsoft ecosystem. But there's also other, providers in there like CrowdStrike and other vendors. But how do we actually integrate so that customer can augment what they have with Jamf and be able to deliver that experience and also leverage all the tooling that they have? So things like integrating with, IDP such as Okta and Active Directory. It is like sharing our telemetry into a SIM so that they can have a centralized location to look at all their data of all their platforms. So our approach is really around, yes, we will create the best experience around Apple, but how do we actually provide the right level of data to the IT and InfoSec team so they can continue to support Apple in their environment?
Excellent. Chiranjeev, I'm going to put you in a bit of a spot there, right? John and Henry have already shared some great quotes, which I'm sure are a great excerpts, right? But from your perspective, since you're very focused on India, right? With the trends that we talked about, the ecosystem focus we talked about, what is different about the Indian market? Are there any nuances that stand out for you when you talk to Indian customers?
I think we are pretty much aligned in terms of what's happening globally, right? I think one of the key things, and I'll talk about Apple first. Apple in the enterprise is kind of growing, right? We see that. I mean, there are a lot of statistics which shows PC shipments are on the downward trend, and the Macs, okay, that's the only space that's that's shipments that are growing. India, for example, I think is the fastest growing market for Apple across the globe, especially on the Mac side. And India being pretty IT heavy, conventionally the Macs were typically used by the developers. And the trend that we see right now is that beyond the developers, I think organizations are looking at giving Mac as a choice. And we are seeing more and more organizations going towards that direction in terms of giving a great experience for their employees, because the experience part, that's a big shift that we have seen in the Indian thought leaders in terms of where they're putting experience in the forefront. But it's a tricky one, right? Where sometimes you need to kind of create experience, but you need to kind of also take care of compliance. How do you balance that? And that's how we're kind of actually helping our customers to kind of bring in a right balance between the experience that you give to your users and also in terms of what your organization needs, right? So that's a big shift that we are seeing. And John and Henry did mention about other verticals as well, right? Apart from the ITs in terms of where they're adopting a lot of Macs, industries like which airline, okay, where EFP, where every pilot is carrying an iPad, right? Today, we are helping many airlines, okay, majority of the airlines in India, which are actually managed and secured using Jamf tools. Highly compliant industries like banking, we see a huge shift. And I always look at banking from a perspective that usually technology adoption that we've seen earlier, I would say probably go to 20, 25 years back, where when the PC kind of came in saying that, okay, is it safe? Okay, when you looked at banks, right? And today there's a huge shift in how banking sectors are looking at technology. They're looking at in terms of how can we have branches where it's completely driven by technology, where an iPad is going to be there, where you can bank using a device, right? So we see a huge shift in the other industries as well, and that's how we are kind of helping customers in terms of managing and securing them.
I'll pick on the word experience, right? You talked on experience, and this is something that we see as well, right? Customers are expecting more of a seamless experience going forward. And Henry, that's then dovetails into the question that I have in mind for you, right? What is the experience that you believe that customers are expecting, and how is Jamf really addressing that, right? What's different about Jamf's approach to creating better experiences?
Yeah, and I think it depends on the industry as well. Okay. I think one of the good things about what we've done over the years is really try to understand that particular industry and what the workflows are and what are they trying to deliver in terms of outcomes for their employees and for their business, and understanding that very innately and then building the right tools to support those workflows. We used a couple of examples already between retail and airline, but there are many others. It's, driver safety. In other parts of the world where they do have an iPhone, and once they're driving, it locks them into a specific application so they don't get distracted. It is those who are in the warehouse using heavy machine equipment. How do you make sure that they have access to information, but without being distracted and creating, a harmful environment? So there's some very innovative areas and many innovative third-party companies that actually create solutions that we integrate with for those specific industries. And I think, I think our viewpoint is really to understand what that customer pain point is. What are they trying to solve? And what is really going to make them adopt more technology to change and transform their work is really how we think about it, is where can we add value? And we've done a number of things, both on the management side and the security side. For example, we know that many organizations want to ensure that not only is the device secure, but when they access an application, a cloud application, that the device to that application is secure. So we have zero trust networking capability built in. We have the on-device security built in. So we look at it from all different angles as to how do we make sure that we're securing it, we're getting the right pieces of information back to the IT team and InfoSec teams, and how can they actually better their environment, but still deliver on the experience that the end user deserves and wants to be productive.
That's a great point, right? So you talked about security, and our research shows that only about 34% of the companies are really using paid BYOD tools, which to me still possesses a big threat when it comes to security and compliance, right? You mentioned that Jamf already is keeping that in mind while building their technologies and solutions, but is there something specific that customers should be mindful of, or where Jamf really addresses that need, right?
Yeah, I think there are two areas. One is that we know that there's a large population of customers that still believe in certain capabilities they want to deliver to their end users. They must have a corporate-owned device. So that's one level of security and management that they have. But there are environments where BYOD makes sense because they're accessing an application or two, but they don't need to have full control of it. Now, when we think about who has sort of the best experience right now, we as a company at Jamf, we use BYOD as a mechanism. Mm-hmm. So Apple device, in fact, my Apple device, my iPhone is a BYOD device, but guess what? It is managed and it is secured. Now, the way that Apple's designed the operating system, you actually have a work partition and a personal partition, and the two don't cross, which is the benefit of using some of the Apple technology, because they're putting real thought into how do you create the experience of using your personal apps and your work apps without actually conflicting with, the two. And so leveraging, the Apple baseline capabilities and then us layering on with some of our security tooling, allows us to actually create that experience that the customer is looking for and ensure that they're compliant. One of the things we haven't talked about is that a lot of our tooling now is going to have more compliance features. So when I talk about management and security, now blending the two, compliance reporting is one of them, because that's important to a lot of organizations. Things like, hey, anti-phishing and anti-malware, all that is going to melt together. So you have the one spot of not only management security in one place. So I think there's a number of areas that, we've been working towards to enhance not only institutionally owned devices, but also when you think about BYOD, how do we build the right tech to leverage the BYOD capabilities as well?
So Henry is clearly passionate about what he's doing. And John,
that's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
We're all passionate.
He's setting up a set of questions that I have in mind for you. But on the BYOD, I'll still finish one thing with Chiranjeev first, right? Because BYOD is a big topic of discussion in India, right? So do you see, again, something which you want to highlight about the Indian market, and does that change your approach when you go to customers in India?
So BYOD as a concept or as a choice has always been there for the organization. The first time that I heard was 2010, aroundish, right? Yeah. It's been there, right? And to be very honest, it's not really caught up steam until COVID happened.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? Many organizations tried. Probably in terms of the tools were not ready, in terms of actually, as Henry mentioned, saying that, okay, there's a very clear bifurcation between the company-owned applications and your personal applications. Mm-hmm. Probably the tech was not there for the adoption to kind of happen. We have that now, and Jamf kind of provides that to our customers. The trend that we see in India, I think And more importantly, because from a compliance perspective, with the DPDP coming in,
Yeah.
it's more of a requirement for organizations to kind of make sure, hey, is the device managed and secured, right? We've seen obviously when new technology or new approaches kind of come in, there are organizations which kind of really are the early adopters, right? So there have been a lot of examples in India where BYOD has been a great success, which has created great experience for the users, right? And it's helped organizations as well from a productivity standpoint. And now with DPDP coming in, I think a lot of organizations are actually putting a policy together. Actually, we're helping a lot of customers who have come to us saying that, hey, you know what? This is something that as part of our audit, which is red. So we want to kind of turn it to green. So how can you help? So we are getting into those conversations in terms of while I think there's a little bit of education that are happening with the employees saying that, hey, these tools really not necessarily would have access to your personal content. And more importantly, the value that they are also bringing in is that with so many malwares and phishing attacks and spam messages and calls that you get, everyone is actually, they know it's a reality that the threat is out there. So when they're actually creating a security layer on the device, they're welcoming it. So that's the trend that we see.
Now, that's an interesting point. So what you're telling is in India, it's still a lot to do with compliance. Is that what you're saying, right? That it's not only the maturity of the organization, but a large number of organizations are doing it to ensure that they're compliant to some of the coming policies. Is that what you're saying? Because that's an interesting insight, I think.
The experience part is also important, right? I think it's a combination of both. There are many organizations in terms of while experience may not be in the forefront for them right now, probably compliance is a factor that they're looking for it, right? But I think it's going to be a combination of the experience that you would want to give to your users, along with compliance that you would want to kind of drive.
Excellent. And one of the points we discussed earlier is about AI. Now, Frost & Sullivan does an annual survey with business and IT decision makers, and it showed us that about 62% of companies today have moved into the implementation of it for AI. So AI is real, right? The discussion of whether AI is about a discussion stage, is a proof of concept, are companies moving up the maturity curve has changed, right? It's clearly now in the production, it's happening in implementation, right? And of course, in various degrees of use cases and stuff, because you talked about industry verticals, John. What does it mean for device management, and what is Jamf really doing in the world of AI?
Yeah. Well, if you think about AI, what do you need for AI? You need data. You need telemetry. And Henry mentioned it earlier. What we provide our customers is all that endpoint information. They have access to all of that on all of the devices that they've deployed, and they can then aggregate that information from the endpoint within their company and use that data to educate their AI engines and their agents, and to make sure that whatever they're doing with that is the most informed that it possibly can be with real-time data from their devices. And I think that's really something that our customers, as they talk about getting more into AI and having functions and trying to monetize AI in certain ways, and also securing their organization as well. Henry said it before, you can't have a secure device without it also being managed, because you can see that there's a vulnerability there. You're getting this data from the endpoint, but you can't do anything about it without a management product to actually deploy an update to that application, or to stop access to that device. And all of that telemetry, that endpoint telemetry, is what our customers enjoy, and that's what they're using to inform their AI agents.
That's a great point again, right? Because a lot of the discussion is for enterprise segment, right? And we sometimes miss out the SMB segment, right? And again, what we understand is nearly 3 and 4 or 75% of companies are not using a paid endpoint solution, right? Do you see a shift in that? Is that a focus area for you? What are the dynamics that play out in the SMB space?
Well, yeah, sure. Well, we have 76,000 customers today,
wow.
And 2/3 of them are SMB. And 1/3 of it is enterprise. In fact, we have the smallest customers all the way up to 75% of the Fortune 100. So our solution really, really scales. But that diversity of revenue source from the SMB is really what's helped keep the consistency and predictability in our business. And it's certainly one of the fastest growing areas, segments that we have seen. And so we're certainly focused on it. We have been. It's a material part of our business. And even going so far as to creating a solution specific to the SMB marketplace, which includes both management and security in an SMB platform that we've created.
Clearly, so we've been discussing multiple assets there, right? We're talking about AI, we're talking about security and compliance, we're talking about experiences. So there's too much happening in this space, right? But if I was to ask John a question for enterprise segment, large organizations, and the question would be, what are the key 3 or 4 things that you would recommend large enterprises to take away as starting points, in when they embark on this journey? What should they be mindful of, right? What will hit them hard to make sure that yes, this is the way forward, right? How do they appreciate that?
Sure. I think one of the first things that enterprises look to is productivity. And how do I make my employees happy and productive? Because happy employees generally are productive. We've also seen the research that shows that when given a choice, 2/3 of the time, an employee will choose an Apple device over another device or ecosystem type. So we've seen a clear propensity of users toward the Apple ecosystem. We believe, and we've seen the research as well, that does make them more productive in that way. It can also lower costs for the organization through lower support costs and IT tickets and that type of thing. So if you're looking for productivity in your employees, certainly the Apple ecosystem is a way to look. And the other part is protection on the security side of it. And we've talked about that a lot because our customers have asked us. We didn't think about that we should just go into security. Our customers had asked us to do that. Yeah. And providing that endpoint telemetry in and the ability to do something about it, because security is not optional. This is a board level discussion. These are CISO organizations and InfoSec teams. All of them are concerned about some sort of a breach. And what we're here to do is to make the employees the most productive that they can be, at the same time protecting the organization in the best way that we possibly can. And that's how we've seen organizations succeed with Apple.
Excellent. Security is not optional. Again, I think a brilliant set of quotes that coming out of this. So we are talking about the need for device management is real. Security is going to be pivotal. User experiences are going to be pivotal. Bring your own device is going to be the way forward. We need to be ready from a compliance perspective or from ensuring that you drive productivity. And the needs for different industries could be very, very different. But the underlying layer, they need to have a strong, robust strategy and work with their partners like Jamf to make this happen for real, right? I think that's a fantastic discussion. But yeah, I just want to let's have one more quick round. I would want to give each of you maybe 10 seconds to give a closing note, right? With all that we discussed, what do you believe is going to be the way forward, right? Something, just top of the mind recall, how do you see the way forward for the industry? And maybe John, I'll start with you, then Henry, and then Chiranjeev, in this space.
So the way forward in the industry, I spoke about it earlier on at the beginning. We're really seeing a transformation here. And not only the transformation in how organizations are finding new and innovative ways to use the devices to make their employees more productive and happy, because those two are correlated, certainly. So we've seen that happen. We've seen that transformation, and we believe Apple ecosystem is the best platform to do that very thing. And we've seen the research to support that. And so we're here to help organizations succeed with Apple. If you're in India, Chiro has a great team that can help supplement any questions you may have in that regard. But really, it's to help our customers be as productive as they possibly can be, because then they're happy customers, and when happy customers, they buy more of our product.
Sorry, Henry, it's not easy to speak after John. Go ahead.
I'll take a different angle. I'll bring it from a customer-centric point of view around the technology side, right? Which is, we want to make sure that people can take advantage of all the capabilities of what we provide, but we know that, there's existing environments that we have to plug into. That's why we really focus in on a lot of the partnerships with some of the strategic alliances that we have with Microsoft, Okta, with Google, and many others. Because in this world, it's not a singular platform, multiple platforms, both from a hardware perspective, but also from a infrastructure perspective as well. So, we're not here to say that all this can't be integrated. We want to make sure that people understand that Jamf's goal is really to ensure that we can make your experience better, not only with Jamf, but also with Apple, in any of the environments that you have. So that's our ultimate goal.
I think that's a great point, and I would agree with it as well, right? It's good to be an ecosystem play at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
And I think great point. Chiranjeev, toughest one,
Yeah,
last
toughest
one.
one after,
But yeah,
after
maybe-
John and Henry, right? But I'll give an Indian perspective to it, right? I think what's the way ahead or the future is, I think Apple is going to grow strongly in this region. And organizations probably understand the need for specialized tools rather than unified tools, be it in terms of management or in terms of security. And no one understands the Apple ecosystem as well as Jamf does. Right? It's in our DNA. Our vision is that we help organizations succeed with Apple. Right? That says it all in terms of if you have, irrespective of the percentages that you would have, I think organizations would want to kind of invest on specialized tools. The other aspect is in terms of, because we are a pretty heavy mobile region, right? Be it in terms of an iOS or an Android, and securing those devices becomes more crucial. And I think we see a huge trend towards in terms of organization investing in terms of securing those multi-platforms. And from a Jamf perspective, we are there to kind of really support both the platforms in terms of securing the devices.
Fantastic. So clearly, Jamf has thought this through. So I think we had a fantastic discussion. I would like to thank all of you for being in this discussion. Clearly, there's a lot that's happening in the industry. Enterprises need to know of this. SMBs need to know of this. And Jamf seems to be on top of what's the changing game here, right? So thank you again for a fantastic discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.